Hello, everyone, and welcome to Performance Anxiety's 38th online reading event. My name is Tom Snarski, and I'm so excited to be your host for this evening, along with Asparagus, who I'm sure will make an appearance at some point, and Evie, our other black and white cat, is just over in the corner, ready to hear some amazing poetry. Um, I could not be more thrilled to be in this space with you alongside a group of 6 amazing poets whose work I uniformly admire and whose voices I cannot wait to hear fill this space really soon with awesome work. In case you haven't listened in before, Performance Anxiety is an online reading series hosted via Skype, usually on the third Thursday of every month at our new, albeit temporary time of 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Central. At each of our events, we feature a group of invited readers whose work we love to share a selection of their writing with us. And having slots every month means we're always looking for folks who'd be interested in reading. So if you are or know a poet or writer who'd be interested in sharing their poems at a future event, please do get in touch with us. We're always excited to meet new people and to have them on Performance Anxiety. We'd love to hear from you via the Performance Anxiety Twitter account, which is at Performance ANXT on Twitter, or you can just DM us or get in touch with us directly. So I'm at Tom Snarski, TOMSNARSKY on Twitter and Instagram, or you can just email me directly at tomsnarski, same spelling, @gmail.com. You can also get in touch with Kristin Garth, who is Performance Anxiety's other co-organizer, and I'm also really excited to introduce Kristin as our first reader of the evening. So without any further ado, let's get started with Kristin Garth. Kristin Garth is a Pushcart Ristling nominated sonneteer and a Best of the Net 2020 finalist. Her sonnets have stocked journals like Glass, Yes, 521, Luna Luna, and more. She's the author of a short story collection, You Don't Want This, from Pink Plastic Press, and The Stakes from Really Serious Literature, as well as many, many, many more books and other projects. She's the founder of Pink Plastic House, a tiny journal, and the co-founder of this very reading series, Performance Anxiety. So thank you, as always, Kristin, for being with us. Take it away, and let's get started.
Well, I'm not reading poetry tonight. I'm going to read something from the short story book, which is the hardback edition that I just got. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm going to read a little bit of the novella that's inside of it called The Meadow, which was I wrote a poetry book that was kind of a poetic version of this novel that I've been working on. And this is some of the actual novel itself. Anyway, let's see. I think I lost my place now. Okay. All right. Off the stairs and into the crowd, scanning frantically for Arabella, Scarlett only saw smirking schmoozers, swaying bodies, clothed and naked of various genders, ages, and shapes. One disrobed old man, an indistinguishable replica of the transients they'd passed on the street outside, twirled and gyrated on a stage. He threw his long, dirty hair around to the music and stroked a penis more akin in size to an exaggerated sex toy than any member Scarlett had ever seen. Across the room, 2 men struggling to subdue a screaming, kicking redheaded naked girl to some hooks on a wall. Scarlett saw the scream first as a gaping mouth and red face, then the music dipped, and she heard its piercing volume. Scarlett was terrified. She gripped Alex's hands tighter, leaned her head against his arm, and closed his eyes. Arabella was nowhere to be seen in this nightmare place. Lacking her presence, Scarlett wanted to see nothing here. She would hide behind her eyelids until someone made her stop. Minutes passed, and then she heard Alex do something completely out of character, raise his voice. "Lucas!" Scarlett's eyes popped open reflexively at the yell of a name. Who was being summoned and why? It couldn't be good. She opened her eyes to see that the yell had not been a summoning, but a greeting over the impossibly loud music. This Lucas was standing directly in front of her. He wasn't at Alex at all, mirroring Scarlett's pose, connecting, blinking dreamy gray eyes at her as soon as she'd opened her own. Though his gaze felt probing and indecent, she couldn't make her eyes look anywhere else. 2 gray magnets atop a chiseled face and dimpled chin. His perfectly symmetrical golden ratio visage belonged in a museum better fit for statuary than a filthy dungeon. Round gray eyes, seemingly as gentle as any passive woodland creature she'd bent down to pet in the meadow grass, examined her and held her still. Layered, thick golden hair landed perfectly into place as he righted the angle of his head. His lips made an artful ascent from straight and neutral to a perfect coy curve. His knowing gaze made it clear that though he'd only just seen her, he knew Scarlet. Her dirtiness and damage by rote. His smile, a stamp of approval on her whole painful life, that smile an unmistakable invitation that made Scarlet feel, for an instant, demonically disloyal. As if he sensed it, this victory over her, he blinked hard. This blink revealed a bolt inside an elegant iris. The bolt seemed to leap and touch to shock Scarlet out of nothing less than a spell he'd cast over her so effortlessly. His seraphic features changed, hardened, and dropped her back into the infernal surroundings of the club. She noticed, suddenly next to Lucas, the tall, striking young brunette with a crimson ribbon in her hair that matched her floor-length velvet cloak and treacherously high heels. Looking to her right, distracted by some activity at the corner of the club, the visible slice of profile of this girl's face was exquisite. Then, when she full face turned toward Scarlet, a new striking accessory stood out far more than any other, a blackened, or rather purpled, eye. When Scarlet's eyes first registered its lurid presentation, she'd actually taken it for makeup, some sick theatrical joke. Only after she'd stared too long and the girl's gaze dropped to the ground with shame did Scarlet realize it was real. Her stomach seized with panic. She'd mistaken this Lucas, momentarily, for some angel, a beautiful princely lover come to save her in this hell she'd been thrust inside. Now that she'd seen his handiwork, she knew the opposite to be the case. He was the evil here that Arabella had feared. For the first time since she opened her eyes, she looked at Alex. His demeanor was as nervous and uncomfortable as she'd ever seen. His distaste for this Lucas was plain, though he stood there quietly tolerating his examination of Scarlet. She longed to speak to Alex alone, but the volume in the club made conversation futile. She felt so lost and on the verge of a blink. Then she felt small arms wrap around her chest and smiled immediately at the smell of Arabella's signature sunflower perfume. She turned so fast and buried her face in Arabella's blonde hair and squeezed her friend tight. Alex leaned down to their level and put his arms around the girls and shouted to be heard, "Glad you're here. Take her to change. Getting started soon." Arabella nodded but didn't move. She tilted her head towards Lucas and his battered companion with a squint and a perturbed expression. "You're going to let this go down." Arabella's requisite shout, but the outrage so clear in her face. Alex rolled his eyes. "It's not my choice. He can't take her outside of this club, so he's constrained. She has limits he'll have to respect." "Respect? Like the flame respects the moth," Arabella responded with a sneer. "Come on." She jerked Scarlet's arm and pulled her swiftly towards a dark corner of the club into a bathroom. As they opened the bathroom door, they encountered an older blonde woman on her knees servicing a silver-haired man leaned against the wall. His hands pulled her wild hair viciously as her head bobbed. He turned and smiled at the girls when they stepped inside. Scarlet looked quickly away. Arabella smirked, then pulled Scarlet to a corner. She put her hands on Scarlet's shoulders with a grip that tightened as she spoke. "We don't have time for any distractions. You're in real trouble here." "Who is that, Lucas?" Scarlet choked on her words, the fear seizing her throat. Arabella shook her head and closed her eyes before she spoke. "I told you about this place, right? The ugliness here, inside and out. He's the poster boy of all of that, as ugly on the inside as he is handsome. I had no idea he'd be here tonight, but it's just the very worst thing. He punched that girl in the eye. He does things like that to all of them, with their consent, I suppose. That and works until they can't take it and leave, then he gets a new one. Them. Her girls, with nothing, from small towns. Sound familiar?" Jesus Christ, he brings them to the city, sets them up, and then he uses them up. Can always get another. He's loaded and he's hot as fuck and can be irresistibly charming. I know you noticed. Scarlett nodded as tears streamed down her cheeks. He wants to rent you tonight. I'm sure he wants more than that. He always wants more than that. He's pure evil, and his fetish is to destroy beauty and innocence. I can't believe Alex is going to allow this to happen. He wants to teach me a lesson. Lucas Jane is not a lesson. He's an execution. He wants to destroy you. But you brought somebody, right? Somebody to help, somebody who could buy me. It doesn't have to be him, right? Before Arabella even spoke, Scarlett had her answer in her friend's wet, desperate gaze. Of course, I did. Derek Brooks. He's got credits, and he'll use them all. Not sexy like Lucas. He looks like Santa Claus, and he definitely is compared to your monster out there. I want Santa Claus. Of course, but it will be a Christmas miracle if he can outbid Lucas Jane. You see that girl he's with? All his submissives have been that attractive, and you know he has no reservations about renting them out. I can't imagine the credits he's accrued here. If he wants you, he can outbid Derek or probably anybody. You're in trouble. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kristin, for getting us started with that excerpt tonight. It's been really cool to see Kristin visit fiction for our past couple of readings. And that again was Kristin Garth, not only co-organizer of Performance Anxiety, but amazing poet and novelist and short story writer in her own right in addition to that. And you can find Kristin on Twitter at Lola and Jolie, LOLA ANDJOLIE, and on her site, KristinGarth.com, KristinGarth.com, to keep track of all the great stuff Kristin is doing, from her own books to the volumes that she edits. She's got the Book of Corinthians coming out really soon about Harmony Korine, which is going to be really cool. So lots to keep tabs on there. So thanks again for Kristin for getting us started. And I'm really excited to introduce our next reader of the evening, someone also with some really amazing new stuff out, and that is Jason B. Crawford. Jason B. Crawford was born in Washington, D.C., raised in Lansing, Michigan. Their debut full-length Year of the Unicorn Kids is out now from Sundress Publications. Congratulations, Jason, on an amazing book release. We're really excited to hear maybe some stuff from it tonight. Take it away.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I love it here. I love coming to Performance Anxiety. So yeah, I do have the book. It is right here. It ironically matches my shirt somehow. That was not on purpose. But I am gonna read two poems from it, and then I have something new that I want to read. So. And because we didn't want our fathers to know, we hushed into the school yellow locker room, ran across 3 highways of basketball chatter, while men screamed at each other over the court's jamboree of screeching new shoes. Something about the breaking of rules or laws or the morality of hunger, we kept quiet. In the final row of benches, asked ourselves to bear, quivering palms, the soft beast flicked on by our tongues, the teaching, oh, the teaching of being young. Simple wanting, what anger we can stuff in our jaws, bent the body into silver faucets. There was this one time where we almost got caught, the taste of your flesh rancid in my mouth. After that, every time I'd tell you, no one was in here. No one would find us. No one would even care. I've been wrong before. I will be again. Yeah, so I wrote this book mainly about safe space and understanding that queer bodies do not really get the luxury of safe spaces. So understanding that the act of being queer eliminates the safe space So in that, a lot of this book is also about like safe space and sex, and that also not existing. So this is a duplex. A duplex for the boy with the cool blue truck in Pennsylvania. I am terrified of the back roads hanging off Pennsylvania. A boy asked me to meet him in the dark alley of the country woods. The boy asked me to ravage him on the creaking off-road, carve my name in him, and with that I'd stay forever. Carve my skin with his and become a glass jar for now. I share my location with my best friend of where to find me. I share my body with a boy and only my best friend knows where I hide when my skin is unlatching at the armpits and ankles, where I hide all the bodies blooming in the swirl of my gut. But his palms requested me, the small bleeding prize he can hold in his hands, a trophy bleeding out at his request. And sure, I'm afraid this man in my cell is a murderer, or that this white man might be a racist and I am unknowing. I am terrified of being found hanging off Pennsylvania back roads. Um, yeah, so that's my book. It's cute. I like it. I'm gonna read a new poem. It's like a little long. It's a triptych. And I wrote this in my MFA program this semester. It's like a couple weeks ago. I've really been evaluating love and love poems, and none of them turn out as love poems. So there's that. Um, so this is my love poem 4 of Unlimited, a triptych. 1. I'm not new to this anger. Its dull blades rest upon the neck of my history, a textbook of red engulfing me every chance it gets. There is a small space between a fist and a jaw that holds so much unspeakable love. What else can I say? What else can say, I love you more than breaking everything in sight? When we were young, we fight like we don't know death is possible. And what do we have to be so afraid of? For the record, I do not condone my own actions. You stood before me, and I wasn't sure who to fight first. I chose the boy, and what of it? Think of what violence can come from all this laughter. The autobiography of my hurt sullied by my own hurting. I became a case study on violence. Look, there, in between the flowering of the meat, a ribbon of blood thinning until it's nothing but dusk. 2. In the schoolyard, we learn to fight. A tongue that should be bitten into half instead doubles in size, swallows itself into a ring of our fist. A boy says something foul and we mutate into a flock of birds, pecking at the glint in his teeth. And what is it about love that makes us want to stomp another's mouth until it sifts into salt-covered fields? Us, silly boys with our hands around each other's necks, heavy in the stench of the boy, his joy running from my arms when he is down. We kick him more until we can see ourselves in the reflection of the puddle he makes. 3. I believe the story started in the classroom, the quiet huffing of our spit balls sequestering in our jaw-locked desks. Young boys being the only thing we have been ever taught to be, loud and violent hands. I think It started with a joke, something about someone's mama or someone's dead, and like the dead names, the air fell flat across our palms. We were ready to drag you out back and beat our love into you, soft stoning with our fist in punishment. We painted the concrete in your ink, the sidewalk forever stained in our tenderness towards you, the touch of another's body, even in violence. My fingers pulling at your teeth, a form of saying, I want to keep you forever in me. Spill my blood to fill the space between us. Isn't that just a form of love? A boy swings his fist at me, and that must mean I'm the only thing left important in his world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason, for that. Your line about the salt fields is going to be with me for a long time. And the phrase, the small fleeting prize. That was Jason B. Crawford, an amazing, amazing poet who you can find on Twitter and Instagram at Jason B. Crawford, JASONBCRAWFORD. And Jason's new book, Year of the Unicorn Kids, is again out now from Sundress Publications. You can also find out info about their chapbooks and other awesome work that Jason's been up to at jasonbcrawford.com. Wow, cool. That was wonderful. Thank you, Jason, again for those poems. And I am really excited also now to be continuing in the vein of poets who are performance anxiety returners, whose work I just love, and it's just all good vibes from here, by introducing our next poet, who is Niesha Trout. And Niesha Trout is a visual and conceptual artist and poet working on her first chapbook titled One Sun is Plenty. And let me tell you, One Sun is Plenty is going to be an amazing thing when it exists in the world to hold. Niesha lives in Los Angeles with her cat Franny, and they are hoping to leave soon because they have lived there for around 2,000 years. So Niesha, thanks for writing some poetry in those 2,000 years. I'm really excited to hear it.
Thank you so much. Hi. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, okay, so I'm first gonna read, I actually have a question. My computer is overheating. It's overheating and it's very loud over here. I don't know if you guys can hear the fan in it. It's like, okay, never mind. All right, I will ignore it and carry on. The first poem I'm gonna read is a prose poem. It's very new. Just wrote it the other day. So it is called Robot Wasp. I am alone today, but sometimes I meet with a friend for lunch or dinner, and we share our latest developments or the stolen latest of others so ferociously our hair begins to split and fry, our throats dry out. Lately, though, the governor has been sending out an experiment of robot wasps to record everything when they land near you, like a home security lens with a panned eye looking for perpetrators. You rarely see them flying around, but if you do, they have onyx bodies and rainbow-colored wings. They feel sinister, so full of duty. I guess the wasps report back somewhere, but I don't know why anyone would need such banal, petty information in order to survive. Once, a man I knew pulled me behind a wall at a dinner party, away from everyone, including my then boyfriend's eyes, and quickly pressed his whole torso into me just to whisper, "I can't believe you're here." Both our heads turned slow over to the hum of a wasp perched small beside us, and that was the only time I ever understood why they were there. The next poem I'm going to read is called Never Blue. Okay. Does the mouth feel the mouth? It's too full with food or excuse to be bothered. The sun is an automatic song around us, and you don't need clean heat to know when the day opens. See it fleck up the grass through the elm leaves? I know you sense it. The trees whisper about us all day, swaying back and forth like two old men talking. I'm so alive and you're so alive too. It's spectacular and dumb. It's like we're not here, almost fake, like a rowdy orgasm. But I do arrive in my dreams as a cut-jawed man giving you the best lie of your life, easy and sweet. I eat it all. I eat the invisible cakes a toddler baked for me. I watch a tangled garden arch back until I water its green suicides. I play house until no one gets home from work to demand my attention. Put down the phone no one asks of me. Tend to the crisis of injury or duty, says no one ever. Tend to me. In truth, I am not there and have closed my heart to the days. I read a book that's one word repeated and the word is blue. I open my naked face to row after row of blue iris beds as the car whips past, slicing back the air. The sky is never blue, mock the irises, offering that a true blue is always more of a purple. I take notes on the sport of beauty. I'm sure we can know something if we don't try, like how the lost tend to look like they're praying. This is not a prose poem. It's called Dating. Dating. What are you good at? I can take a whole life of power and pain and fan it back like a splayed poker hand into one card, a peacock retreating its flash. My groin pulses heat and then drips, ready. I am pretending to be naive so someone who seems strong will love me. This is a new prose poem called On the Edge. On the edge. On the edge of a great iron lake, there is a chartreuse town. The air is always balmy, and the people of all ages are only two kinds, adept and technicolor, sliding right up into the moments and tasks at hand, or they are drawn and furtive, waiting in jaundiced anxiety for a moment to arrive. No one in the town ever dies, but eventually, in the course of one day, they change so drastically that nobody, not even their family, recognizes them again. Is it okay if I read a couple more? Okay. Okay. This is called The First Power, A Woman Midlife. It took forever, but we are real beauties now, perfect even. Pearls holding sun who end a wicked eye in a single marble pardon. Machines of fine-toothed tenderness, unconditionally knowing until every doubting frenzy within springs headlong into paralytic remission. I believe in myself now the way I believe in the next breath. It happens so fast you don't need it. One day, a radium of invisibility rushes in. Strange fires of the mind shake out in coarse stars across the darkness, hovering outside of our hearts' hidden reservoirs. What remains unloved stays protected, as unknown, flowing beneath our surface sheen, running up through our breastplates in lime veins under the skin. The decision to care if a man even notices me is muted. I notice me. Like the gaze of a mother, the whole body concerns itself with every other part of the body. My whole physicality is an understanding, rendering it futile. I am a final word, slaying half-truths. You cannot squander me. I am the squandered. We didn't care about being anything precise before we met this version of ourselves. Or we did care, but it was stolen by the concern of one brute force which chose to ravage a fresher, inedible side of us, prosper off its own inversion. Forgive it. Now a bombastic silk rules the world, is in charge of all things. Building out from a wilderness with a cavalier ease, vast open fields left willfully to rot, giving over with abandon to the cruelty of sleep. Let's see. Oh, sorry. I lost it. Oh, okay. Let me see. I'm gonna read this one. I don't know if I've read this one before, ever here before. I can't remember. I can't remember what I read that time I was here. Okay, this is called Being Here. I don't know if I should introduce this poem or not. And maybe it's very self-explanatory. I think it is. Okay, Being Here. After he burst the bullet through his heart, maybe 2 months after, I looked really elegant. Not right away, but eventually I had that look. The way a set of stairs winding up into itself is lovely, the way the skin on a ring finger goes indented. I remember once I looked in the mirror and saw the wall behind me in a house I wasn't in. It must have been the neighbor's home. I must have snuck in under the door slit. This was my new alchemy, a portal at my disposal. Maybe I should have tried out for some contests for beauty. I was coming on 25 and lucent. I wish you would believe me. I can tell you don't want it to be true. You're so real I could pinch you and you know what's best. I think if I was a father and I had a daughter, I'd want her to be a certain kind of pretty. Something like a sylph who knows how to haunt a neighbor. I'd want my girl to be that way. Then I'd come back and stay a while, watch her live out her life as a ghost. I have one more I can read, but I feel like I'm like reading 1,000 poems. I don't know. I'll read one more and then I'm just gonna let everybody else read something. Thank you for listening. Okay, this is called More Than This, after Brian Ferry. More than this. All of suffering is having a body, otherwise it's just perfume. Soon enough that day will come to lay its corpse on us anyway, crush us out into gardens. We go all day long without a word about it. All day long the day mocks the night. I think in searing thoughts, please get us out of here. This is such a drab place, my slab of a home, like a cast on a fracture. I can think of nothing smarter than the spray off an orange peeling. My thighs shaking in the back seat, the fine blonde hairs on them glittering. You're going to save me, aren't you? I stand for us dissolving. We can keep walking, it's lilac out now. Right into traffic we go, the red mansion in our chests, sitting back, slowly grinning. That's it. Thank you. That was fun.
Thank you so much, Niesha, for sharing those poems with us. That was fun for us too. And it was so cool to get to hear things that I've seen on the page and maybe heard before, but I don't remember either. So I appreciate you going out there and sharing that one anyway. And that again was Niesha Trout. Thank you for being here. Niesha, you can find on Instagram at Joe_Pesci_in_Paris. So JOE_PSCI_IN_PARIS for poems. Nisha's private on there, but we'll follow back some poets. And on Twitter, you can find her at Niesha Trout, which is NIESHATROUT. And Niesha is again working on that chapbook, One Son is Plenty, which is going to be explosive when it lands. And Niesha is also working on a conceptual art book called Eternally Yours. That's going to be an art exhibition and a book in one. It's an instruction manual on synchronistic portals you can enter through ephemera and grief. So keep an eye out and an ear to the ground for that. Fabulous. And with that moment, we move into the back half of the order already, which kind of happens very quickly, to me while I'm enraptured by all the stuff that's going on. But I am extremely excited to introduce our last three readers, the first of whom is someone whose work on the page I've admired for such a long time. And that I run the risk of doing that thing that happens when you've read something too much and never actually said it out loud, which is just, if I hope to good Lord that I say your last name correctly. And I hope that you'll correct me when I inevitably mess it up, because I'm about to introduce Joseph Simas. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay, thank you, Joseph. And Joseph is an amazing poet and a translator whose work has appeared in countless beautiful places. He's been in Tembler, Hambone, Oblique, Poesy, Axe, Chuanyi, which is a magazine that I wrote a poem about in my first book because I love it so much, and many, many other reviews. Joseph's books include Entire Days from legendary Burning Deck in Rhode Island, Kinderpart from Paradigm Press, Sets from TELS, Les Premières Leçons de Lecture in France, and he was also a translator of one of my very, very favorite poets of all time, Anne-Marie Albiac. He translated Mezza Voce by Anne-Marie Albiac, and that's out from Post Apollo Press. He's been anthologized all over the place. He's read all over the place, including at Bard and the Detroit Institute of the Arts and at the Centre Pompidou, which is pretty cool. But I'm just incredibly impressed all the time by the care that Joseph brings to language and to his translation. So Joseph, thank you so much for joining us as a reader. It's a real thrill to get to hear you read tonight. So thank you so kindly, and I'm going to mute myself so you can do what you do so well.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing me out of my hole. It's been actually 10 years since I've read in public. So performance anxiety is sort of existential anxiety these days, and I'm trying to come out and be a bit more visible in the world. We'll see if that works. I put together a short set, a soft 7, as I think you put it, Tom. So it should be around 7 minutes or so. Once I start, I probably won't stop. It's all, except a couple of poems that led, it's from a book called Anime Titles. And I describe it by saying I conflate aspects of anime with poetry. And there are a couple poems in here that led to that decision to try to make a book out of it all, and then they stand for themselves, I guess. So here we go. From Anime Titles. I do not fit in, I never have, almost and on occasion, but never quite. And my body has never fitted me, and my soul has never fitted my body, and my mind has never fitted my head. Very small animal, antlers way back when, in forked pears, cabbage patches in winter, magnified, in light years only, it is growing bold. Tracking footsteps, it is an escapade in an hourglass, periodically ticking. It is a strong gale. It is a flutter of ashes. It falls like powder. It falls from scattered remains. It rises a ballerina. It digs and twirls. It summons hailstones. It is a grain of sand, a mirror grain, and a phantom grain. It is a neck. It is locks of hair. It stings. It is desire and lust, clicking hard heels, mixing drinks and categories. It is daintily thus, in between sand and glass, ashes caught. It is now time, now ash, now dust. It is first things in warm, damp places. It is this cry or that. It comes without sensation. It has no value. It shall rise as song perhaps. Perhaps it shall cry and cry. It is an escape path, universal and void, from whom it takes place. I ran into a tree this morning along a wrong path as usual, and to the tree I said, "Forgive me, I might have asked for more had a dog not barked and pointed. The boy had a hunger. If only I could be so primitive. Should he not be out hunting? How ludicrous a thought is that. I have gone raving mad. Meanwhile, a dog behaves as yesterday. Killing is neither in the cards nor in the stars. The tree said nothing. Does life on this earth matter?" Agent C. It is dormant at reveille. It clicks its heels, awakes in a foreign land. Beauty comes with the territory. It is deadbeat, sublime, and pernicious. It is depth of perception. It is surface deep, scratched at high decibel, a hairline trigger, invisible, beauty ever so bestial, my loveliness non-such. It is skin torn at scar lines. It is tongue-tied, bleeding out. Grand introduction. It was a grand introduction. It was a wig of real hair, discarded. It was a cast around a wrist. It was severed at the waist. It was I that lay there, its neck snapped on marbles. It went quick. It flipped for eternity. A grand staircase upside down, a hollow hell, upended on a shelf. No one there nor here. I thinks. It was youth, a slow yo-yo. It was a death trap. That skull below, a top spinning in a fountain, a sheer slip. It did not snap. It crumpled in a heap. How soft it was, tricky on the rebound. It was crackers and creamy. What a comeback. In the round, it was I that bled about. It was rubbery, billowing out. It was beeswax in a shell, a drooling disguise. It was a yoke. It was a toupee in neon lights. Reminds me of the time you remember. Yeah, of course you do. But what is time if not irreversible? A measure of how things are lost. Though one says, I remember, therefore nothing is lost, but displaced sounds more like it, spread around in new arrangements, say. Unrecognizable perhaps, but not lost. You remember the time. Well, not that time. Of course you do. Now it's different. Nothing is the same. Nothing is lost. It's like this. That thing over there, it was a hot potato. You remember. Now it's as cool as a cucumber. It's not even a potato anymore. As if one could expand visible darkness, setting fire indiscriminately, lacking tenderness, welcome tenebrae, surplus of specifics, welcome tentacular, scattered qualities. Welcome repetition, word besiding word, first involuntary cry, part force of breath, through mute body, part turn toward mother tongue, stuttering prepositions between contradictory flights, formally farther apart, forgive them, welcome, darkness of purpose, welcome, faint of heart, welcome, stillborn start, turn by turn alone, without appearance, astray in a whisper, where breath becomes place next to light. In those sad eyes, a wild canine sadness, a tryst beyond contagion. Behold the shadow play, sounding the surface debts, eyes like ocean blue, like blue of noon, not blue like sky blue, veiling a thin cover, stray eyes stay put, our sweet little boy, lazy eye as plaintiff, now a lighthouse on the blink, in the intermittence, big and round. And a couple to end, two short ones, is that okay? Quiet and refined. It is a drawing room with tea and theory, and a mind in it. It is of charming ilk to have thought of spiders spinning silk to deplete and delight us. It is in the recesses of a Dharma chamber without a word. Fun is something wicked, yeah? On the lookout. The overdog and the undermouse. We got it all covered. Boss, you don't say. Hey there, Peaches. Yoo-hoo, get out of my way. Pow.
Wow.
Thanks.
What a journey we have just been on. Thank you, Joseph, for that, for sharing those poems with us. That was incredible, and such a privilege to be the first public reading in 10 years is rather an amazing privilege. I know I keep using that word, but it's true. And that for everyone, again, was Joseph Simas, who you can find on Facebook at joseph.simas.3. So Joseph, Joseph Simas, Simas.3. Joseph also posts poems occasionally, I believe, on Facebook. So if you want to follow new exciting work, because I love getting to hear the new stuff, as we've gotten treated to a few times by a few readers tonight. And you can also find Joseph on Twitter and Instagram, I think mostly Instagram, at Simas Data, SIMASDATA. So I think I speak for all of us when I say we're very excited that there will be a little bit more public-facing stuff going on in the future, because these poems are alive, and it's so cool to hear them. Wow. So it's always a little bit bittersweet to get towards our last couple readers of the evening, but we are closing with a couple of amazing poets who I'm very excited to get to hear. And the first of those poets is B. Morris. B. Morris is the author of the micro chapbook Alive on Planet Earth, released as part of Ghost City Press's 2021 summer series. Their recent work appears or is forthcoming in No Contact, Poet Lore, Underblong, Hobart, and elsewhere. B also runs the newsletter Blackout Fascinations, which you can find at blackout.substack.com. Thank you, B, so much for being here with us. I'm really excited to hear your work. Take it away.
Hello, hi everybody. I'm going to start with this poem called Yes Tomorrower that was published last year in No Contact magazine. And I got inspiration from the title from a poem called Tomorrow, No Tomorrower by Bradley Drumfeller. From up here in the clouds' untainted wifery, there is an alwaysness to our splintering, ungendered and seeking a place to fully rewind. Like light against light, it is light, delineated only then by foreboding, a groaning floorboard barely touched, stranded below another's soft heel. To alleviate the not sleeping, I threw a party only a pop song could understand, back to you in the studio. Way out here, our tongues crescent like real life. And how the dirt said to Sisyphus's bare feet, touch me again in a satire of poppies. You, golden hour to the rind, money voice. If this pebble were more erotic, it would be called a petal. See how I'm queering the leaves on the trees for you? It was real, and now it's unspeakable. Dozens of mouth factories closing by the hour, a record high. Break open the rainy day miracle savings. Want you so bad it's tectonic, and I don't mean to say platonic. The sky is like a sky, it's not just blue. You aren't lost, lucky one, only in your new moon era. Meanwhile, if it weren't for the water in my eyes, I could have counted all the ways the rain loved me. I like that poem, that's a fun one. Okay, next I'm going to read Guilt Duvet. This was published in Underblong, also last year. It's about being sad. Pulled over myself a guilt duvet, ignored a whole week of dawns, stared at episodes of mania and kissed every one of their teeth. Shoveled gravel from his voice into my pocket for sentiment's sake, pressed against her open-handed open hand. Considered the shape of falling water, colorless coldness. Made the occasional mistake on several occasions, split despair into two distinct halves. Heard the poet say Avenue A is near the river. Listened to terrible music composed by the first love of my life. Wore my favorite fire like a dress. Got halfway inside of language before it cruelly spat me out. Became very serious for a matter of days. Decided that there was no point, then that there was one. Laughed because what else was I to do? What else was I to do? Okay, the next poem is sort of a companion poem to that one. It's going to be published by Little Patuxent Review later this year. It's called Whose Eyes to Pour Into. Have rocked the rinds and threads of life, have screened dreams despite my thrown fingers, have felt sorrow for a year, have channeled ability and inverse, have cried less than I should have and more, have piled the books, marked them up, have scarred the knee, have paid the fee, have shivered at the side wound, have been held in impossible places, have set blazing successes into brief motion, have not drunk from a stream, have been all right, all wrong, in between. Am liquid light searching for a beholder, searching still for a beholder. And the last one that I'm going to read today, this is a new one I wrote probably a couple days ago. It's called Scorpius, after the constellation Scorpius. I feel just like a strummed guitar, headless and full of airy bones, like could be the daybreak. This is the end of it. Reeling to contextualize the stunted growth of a flower, this, the new shape of literature. A screen, a subtitle sits there. Such unease makes my androgyny. I'm a fiend for the way you can't pronounce cumulonimbus, but you know the night sky by name. So you see it. We're not invisible. It's all transformation in the end. Things like magic and thunder coexist on this earth. We can stretch it so far. It is warm enough. It expresses. And that's all I've got for now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, B. That was electric. I think I'm scribbling on my little like piece of paper towel, touch me again in the satire of poppies, if I transcribed that right, or reading my handwriting right. That is amazing. And that was B Morris. You can find B on Twitter at B Morris, which is, or Morass, I guess it's BEAMORASS. B posts some amazing and beautiful stuff on Twitter. And you can find again their microchap, Alive on Planet Earth. It's still available at Ghost City Press as part of their microchap series from 2021 summer. Check it out. That if you want more poems like that, who wouldn't? That was incredible. Yes, at a long sort of last, despite all my best efforts to have poetry last forever, we are at our last reader of the evening, but I'm very excited to introduce them, and Basil's here to join me. He's very excited to introduce them too. That's okay. Basil will, let me do the talking, I guess. And that is W.V. Sutra, or Sutra. Sutra was born in Africa and raised in Southeast Asia and the Middle East, born hither and thither on the surging tides of Cold War and soft power. He's been at various times a rock musician, a public health professional, and an educator. Shout out to the educators. He began writing poetry during the COVID-19 lockdown, and his work can be found in various online journals and at wvsutra.com. That's right, Basil, wvsutra.com. He lives and works on a horse farm in the shoulders of the Holston Mountains in East Tennessee. Thank you so much, Sutra, for joining us from that place, and thanks for reading poems from it too.
Peace and greetings to the group and to the chat. I'm delighted to be here. This is my coming out party, poetry-wise. My first public reading, so thanks again for that. I've paid my dues to get here, so I'm happy to be claiming my seat. My first publication was just a year ago. Derek Varn took a couple of my poems and put them in Former People, and gave me such encouragement, and so I've kept at it. I had no ambitions to be a poet, just kind of happened to me. I'm kind of a burned out veteran of the rock and roll wars, and poetry was just such a nice break from all that. So I write a lot of polemic poetry. I write a lot of political poetry. Maybe that's due to my background, but I grew up on the hard edges of what we call the Cold War, and it was not so cold where I was at. There was a lot going on, and met a lot of very interesting and shady, horrible characters over the years, and this poem is about one of them. It's called Port Wine, the Spy. My children, my fellow prisoners, some men are false. We may deny it. True, the broad day smiles as the rain eases, but the false man smiles so easily. And are we not always told to give the other man the benefit of any doubt as he slips the acid into your wine? I claim secret knowledge today to share with any who care of port wine, the man, and his mission under formerly Levantine skies, an agent of state and thus kryptonite safe in warlike days gone by. Port wine carried the money over the road to old Damascus, there to pay for coups and votes and arms for virtuous men who saw their way clear to a proper way of thinking. All this I heard from the man himself in the presence of wonderful bunnies at the London Playboy Club over steaks and Irish coffee. I assert and assure my right mind to the group in spite of the many trips I have took in the wilds of Chelsea and St. John's Wood, where the hunter rides in a cab. Do you hear what they say, my poor wine? They will see you hang one day. Moon-faced paterfamilias, an asset ahead of your time. Syrian people are shouting at you. They are sticking their knives into you. You laugh in their faces and spit out the blood while capering over the rubble. Wily port wine taught me stealth and the joys of clandestine life, trading new songs for old and riding the backs of the farthest behind. On the streets of Hamra, people would say, "Are you looking for Port Wine the Spy? He lives in Hazmi, quite near Asfuri, and he really loves to get high." Oh, yes. My next poem does require a little bit of setup. I used to live in West Central Georgia, and I came across a local phenomenon there, a folk artist known as Eddie Owens Martin, or Saint Ohm, as he was later called. He was just a farmer's son in the Pine Barrens of West Central Georgia. He was gay. He found that way of life incompatible, and he moved up to New York, where he worked. He was a sex worker. He ran gambling clubs. He sold drugs. He got in trouble with the law, but he was a wonderful painter, and he developed his own religion. And when he inherited the family farm, some years later, having done some time in prison and all that, he turned the whole place into a large religious complex of his own devising. It's extraordinary, and the name of the place is Pasaquan. Pasaquan. You can find it easily online. I was there a couple of years ago, but I first went there over 20 years ago when it was in something of a ruin. It's now been taken over by Columbus State University, and it's been wonderfully fixed up. I recommend it highly to anyone. But I was fascinated with Eddie's life, and so I wrote this poem about him. It's called The Pasaquan, Eddie Owens Martin. Santo Om, will you let me die so we can meet at last? Let God grab me by my hair, by my long beaded beard, drag me out my dope-ass house up to heaven, flying over the sex trees and the chain gangs and the pine barrens of Marion County. Dear St. Eddie, give sweet dreams in the city to all the $5 hustlers who need money for rocks and for paint boxes, to the loiterers at the fabric outlets in Bibb City, to the homeless drunks down by the Chattahoochee. Bet you wish Cornerstone was still open, boys. Best phenobarb detox in the state. All your SSI money gone again after a week at the bootlegger house. Grits and sausage in the morning. Tax dollars well spent in Columbus, Georgia. Eddie Owens, you who saw the power in walls and compounds, towers and temples, shades and patterns, know that the first time I went to your house, it still smelled of all the shit from your giant dogs. My dad said, "Isn't this great?" He was a big fan. Oh, Holy One, you who, forgive me. Blessed is the man whose ass gets too old to sell, for he will become a saint. And everybody loves a saint, especially Saint Eddie, who looks not on our sinful bodies, but on the strength of our love. Om, Om. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sutra, for those poems and for riding us out into the night of poetry. That again was WV Sutra, who you can find on Twitter at W_V_Sutra, SUTRA. WV Sutra just had a poem called Going to Acapulco, published by Wafanail Press. Also has some poems coming out in the summer with Door is Ajar. Sutra's first book, Chained to a Zombie, is complete in manuscript, and it's been submitted to a number of publishers. Godspeed, Sutra, with that. And we will keep an eye and ear to the ground and out as well for that. Wow. Yeah, so it's always, we're over an hour in, and it's been a beautiful hour of getting to hear just incredible work from all of you. And before we say just a few things to close, I just want to thank you all again so much for being here, for listening to our readers, and to our readers for sharing their amazing work with us this evening. It's always a great privilege to be in my position, getting to hear you do what you do incredibly beautifully. So thank you also again to our listeners, whether you're live with us right now or listening on YouTube, for giving an hour of your lives over to this wonderful poetry and fiction that you've heard tonight. I hope if you're listening with a sheaf of new work close at hand, you might consider dropping us a line at Performance Anxiety on Twitter, or you can email me directly at tomsnarsky, TOMSNARSKY @gmail.com. We'd love to have you share your work at a future event. Basil, as you can see, is just itching to hear new poems. And our next reading is actually going to be on May 19th. We always tend to do it on the third Thursday of the month, and we would would love to have you as a listener or a reader at that event. And we'll always have them going forward. So if you want to come in and read some stuff, please let us know. To close tonight's reading, I want to share two quick poems that are of great significance to me. One is very short, and one I would describe as maybe short of breath. So when I knew Joseph was reading, I wanted to read this poem. It's a very, very short poem that Basil really likes, apparently. Let him down gently. It's by the poet Henri Albiac, and Joseph translated it. It's a poem that I wrote about in my first book because I loved it so much. It's a poem. It's a very, very small poem. It's called "A Small Boat is Burning on the Banks of the Port." Her being unaware that she would never know that again. And the last thing I'd like to share with you before we close for tonight is a beautiful poem that I really like by William Bronk. This is his selected poems from New Directions. And this book is one of those books that follows you around forever, I feel like, when you read it for the first time. And I had a dream where not just one copy of this book, but two copies of this book showed up. So I was like, I better follow that. So this is a poem that will close tonight's reading called The Rumination of Rivers. And I'm right by the Shenandoah, so that's where I'm reading this from. I fall asleep meditating rivers, their flows, that gravity desires their deep waters, determines their pull, that dams do not stop them, that even there, behind that solid wall, their weight downs them, and released, they rage toward their easement as much as in natural falls where they gush white in frantic slams at rocks and tear at earth banks because earth has lured them, sun has energized. In less watered times, other places, quietly, shallow streams sport more gently at the rocks to speak the same urges or wind themselves between like a single finger's slow caress. I think of slowness, patience, indifference to time, their endurance as almost lost at the bottom of sculptured ruins, worn and dug as canyons. Their flow goes on, their intention still the same, as though never was ever enough, though it is. And my mind meanders in grassy, flatter lands, in barely perceptible flow. I fall asleep.